Just a couple of days are remaining for the UPSC Prelims exam, and this is the right time to understand the emerging and expected trends for the examination in order to understand how do we respond to the emerging trends so as to maximize our score in the upcoming prelims exam. Guys, today we'll be discussing 5 expected trends, and just a disclaimer in the beginning, we won't be discussing expected questions, rather we would be discussing expected trends. Predicting trends, predicting patterns is a more rule-based approach, and that's what we are going to do today. Number 1, guys, paper 1 this year is likely to be relatively more difficult, slightly more difficult, while the CSAT paper is likely to be relatively easy compared to the 2023 prelims paper. And how do we say this? Let's understand in a more detailed and structured manner. Prediction number 1, the paper might get a bit more linear. If we take examples of past year papers 2021, 2022, 2023, the paper has been getting time consuming, lengthy. This was more so the case earlier with CSAT paper, where time management has become a real challenge. But over the past years, this is becoming a problem in paper 1 as well. So how exactly the paper becomes lengthy? Because at the end of the day, 100 questions are to be asked. So how is it becoming more lengthy? Reason number 1 is multi-statement questions. Guys, before we come to the multi-statement questions, we will be understanding this through the Eisenhower matrix and how it causes decision fatigue. But after we have discussed the reasons for lengthy question paper and lengthy questions. So number 1, multi-statement questions. So the number of questions having more statements, multi-statements, 4 statements, 5, 6, even 7 statements is on the rise. So this is just an example from 2023 prelims paper, where a question was asked on Anemia Mukt Bharat strategy and 4 statements were given. Another reason how the questions or paper in general becomes more lengthy is by incorporating verbose questions. This is another example from 2023 prelims itself. This question has 3 statements only compared to this question which had 4 statements. But if you compare these questions, this question is also time consuming. The reason being it's very verbose, although it has only 3 statements. Like statement 1 says, if the election of the President of India is declared void by the Supreme Court of India, all acts done by him or her in the performance of duties of his/her office of President before the date of decision becomes invalid. Quite a lengthy statement, and such a statement that adds to our cognitive load. We need to think, we need to reason more while we are dealing with such questions which either have more statements or which are verbose in nature. So what do we understand here by Eisenhower matrix? Guys, Eisenhower matrix is nothing but a phenomenon where our mind tries to avoid difficult tasks and prioritize easy tasks. That's what we do in our everyday lives. पेपर में भी यही करना है, पेपर में कोई एडवेंचर नहीं करना. In the paper, we are going to prioritize the lighter questions. Now, what do we mean by light? Those questions which are not verbose or which have relatively lesser statements, in which there is lesser cognitive load on our mind, where we don't need to think a lot, we don't need to reason out a lot, and we don't have that need to necessarily derive the correct answer. Ultimately, we are avoiding decision fatigue in the first half of the examination. We don't want decision fatigue to seep in, because when decision fatigue seeps in, we tend to make mistakes even on the basic or obvious questions. So we are keeping these lengthy questions, these verbose questions or these multi-statement questions for the later hour of the examination. So that's learning number 1. Prioritize light questions in the first hour of your examination. And guys, this strategy has helped students to increase their accuracy by avoiding decision fatigue. Moving ahead, guys, prediction number 2, the randomness in the prelims paper is likely to increase. Again, if we take examples of past year papers of 2021, 2022, 2023, the randomness has been increasing progressively year after year. So what happens when randomness increases? Number 1, we attempt those questions, those random questions with lesser confidence. Number 2, those questions, precisely because they are random, they are time consuming. But a sigh of relief, a good thing here is that our strike rate, even in those random questions, is likely to be moderate. ऐसा नहीं होता है कि पेपर बहुत ज़्यादा रैंडम आ गया, क्वेश्चंस बहुत ज़्यादा रैंडम बन गए तो हमारा स्ट्राइक रेट बिल्कुल ही नीचे आ जाएगा. Based on our pre-existing knowledge and the other commonsensical and logical approaches that we use in the examination hall, our strike rate is likely to be moderate. So, moving a step ahead, we can categorize random questions into 2 categories. One is partially random and another would be absolutely random. Partially random, let's take an example. This question from Prelims 2023 had 3 statements. Statement 3 is a point of interest. It says, meandering of Gandak river formed Kanwar lake. Now here, this statement or this question is partially random because statement 1 and statement 2 are easy to make out through our pre-existing knowledge, through our basic gyan. But statement 3 goes into those nuances where Gandak river has been replaced or Buri Gandak has been replaced by Gandak river. So this question would fall in that partially random category. Let's take an example of an absolutely random question. This question from Prelims 2023 where UPSC had given 3 animals, lion-tailed macaque, Malabar civet, sambar deer, and it had asked how many of the above are generally nocturnal or most active after sunset. Now this is a completely random, absolutely random question because as civil services aspirants, we are not expected to know as to which species are nocturnal or which species portray sexual dimorphism or which species emit what kind of pheromones and so on. Completely random. But what is the learning, guys? What is the learning here? The learning is we will have to attempt questions in the range of 80 to 85 questions. सिर्फ इसलिए कि पेपर का रैंडमनेस और बढ़ गया है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं होगा कि हम बहुत कम क्वेश्चंस अटेम्प्ट करेंगे. If we are attempting questions in the range of 60s, 70s, even 75, then we are standing very much on the edge. We will have to take those risks and attempt questions in this particular range, assuming the difficulty level of the paper remains same. If the difficulty level of the paper reduces, we might want to attempt more number of questions. So that's an important learning. Moving ahead, prediction number 3. Guys, now this trend has been visible throughout the past year papers. Majority of questions are solvable through, number 1, knowledge supplemented by risk. Number 2, knowledge supplemented by logic. And number 3, knowledge supplemented by common sense. And this trend is likely to consolidate even better. Like if you take example of Prelims 2023, on an average, students were able to attempt hardly 30 questions. Those were sure shot, which they could attempt solely based on their knowledge. So if a student is attempting 80 questions and only 30 questions are sure shot, then in the remaining 50 questions or so, the student either is taking risk or he is using some logic or he or she is using some commonsensical approach. So let's understand this in more detail. Knowledge plus risk. Now let's take an example of a PYQ asked in Prelims 2023. Guys, this was a current affairs based question but this was relatively random, where you had the knowledge, but again you had to take risk. How was it? There were two statements given. In statement 2, it said, India needs to extract more than a quarter of the world's groundwater each year to satisfy the drinking water and sanitation needs. Drinking water and sanitation needs of almost 18% of world's population living in its territory. Now we have read in our basic NCRTs, geography NCRTs, that majority of both groundwater and surface water extraction is done for agricultural purposes. So, the fact being mentioned here that is being used for drinking water and sanitation is patently wrong. So, if you eliminate statement 2 here, in this case, you get the direct answer. So, here we had knowledge plus we had to take risk based on that pre-existing knowledge. Moving ahead, let's take example of a question where knowledge had to be supplemented with logic. Now, this question was asked in Prelims 2023. The question was, which one of the following best describes the concept of small farmer, large field? Again, majority of the students had no idea about this keyword being asked, but this question was solvable through wordplay or word association. So, for example, what do you understand by small farmer, large field? The basic understanding or the basic meaning of this keyword resonates best with option B, which says many marginal farmers in an area organize themselves into groups and synchronize and harmonize selected agricultural operations. So, in this case, we had to use logic over and above knowledge. Now, moving a step ahead, let's take an example where knowledge had to be supplemented with common sense, our understanding of our everyday life. The question from 2023 PYQ says, which one of the following makes a tool with a stick to scrape insects from a hole in a tree or a log of wood? So, here the animal which is able to make tools for a specific purpose needs to have relatively well-developed hands to make those tools. Also, that animal needs to be more intelligent, because tool making is a skilled activity. So, among the given creatures, orangutan is the most probable candidate, the most probable answer. Here, if UPSC had given other options like chimpanzees, gorillas, then we might have been confused a bit. But here, the other options are fishing cat, otter and sloth bear, which can be directly eliminated, and orangutan is the most likely correct answer. So, here knowledge has been supplemented with common sense. Basic gyan plus our understanding of our everyday life. But what is the learning here? Guys, the learning is take calculated risks. Why are we emphasizing on the importance of taking risks? Guys, as we have seen in the beginning, majority questions are solvable through supplementing knowledge either with risk or logic or common sense. If we stay hooked only to knowledge-based answering of questions, then we might not be able to answer even 50 questions in the examination hall. So, we will need to attempt questions in that given range. We will need to take calculated risks in order to score marks in a safer range above the cutoff. Moving ahead, guys, the fourth prediction is CSAT is likely to be relatively balanced this year. Guys, a few weeks ago when I had written this article for Indian Express, I had discussed in detail as to how the CSAT paper has been evolving over the years, and one important aspect that I had highlighted was the paper has become disbalanced, unbalanced. Say for example, in Prelims 2023, there were 39 questions from quantitative aptitude alone. Also among those 39 questions, 26 questions were from number system alone, and 9 questions were from permutation and combinations alone. Guys, I have seen many students having 25 to 30 marks above cutoff in paper 1, failing in CSAT by half mark, 1 mark, 2 mark or so. Guys, the paper tends to become more and more random if a particular portion of or a particular area or a particular topic gets undue weightage in the paper. Similarly, another prediction is CSAT is relatively likely to become less complex. Here I had given an example of this question on calendars. Now guys, calendars have been traditionally scoring topic, but here UPSC had added that element of number system in this question. So a question which would otherwise have been easy became complex and time consuming. So another prediction is this trend of complicating questions, of making questions more complex or of making easy topics difficult is likely to decrease to a certain level. Now guys, again a disclaimer, here no one can predict the exact paper format, but I am telling this based on the experience of students in the past years, including 2023 prelims. The reference to randomness has importance here. If you make a paper more and more random, the process loses its utility. If students are scoring 30 marks, 35 marks above cutoff and they are failing in CSAT, that doesn't serve a purpose, and it is not a one-off case. There is a plethora of students clearing prelims, clearing paper 1 with good margin, heavy margin, but failing in CSAT. So I think prelims 2023 paper was a peak that UPSC had reached with respect to difficulty level, complexity level, and now it might come back to the level of papers which used to be 2 to 3 years ago. Probably the question format of 2020 or 2021 might be replicated, where all the areas, be it reading comprehension, be it quantitative aptitude, be it reasoning ability, might have equal proportion of questions, if not equal, slightly balanced proportion in the paper, and the complexity might increase. Now that's an observation. Guys, the important learning over here is don't be scared but keep practicing. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि ज़ीशान सर ने बोल दिया कि CSAT आसान आने वाला है. Here let's be very clear that the CSAT paper might not get radically changed. Radically आसान नहीं होगा, but relatively आसान हो सकता है. लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि आप complacent हो जाओ और practice करना छोड़ दो. You will need to keep practicing, but don't be scared. You have a reason to not be scared. I'm telling this because I get many calls, many messages from students telling कि CSAT में confidence नहीं आ रहा है, attempt कम हो रहे हैं, time manage नहीं हो पा रहा है, क्या हम attempt skip कर दें, so on and so forth. So guys, please don't be scared, but keep practicing. Guys, at the end, to connect with me or other mentors for one-on-one mentorship, do fill the form given in the description box. And guys, at the end, I would wish you all the very best for the upcoming examination.